Thank you. Wow. I started this morning at 7:30 with Safe Conversations, Connecting in a Disconnected World. Wave at me if you were there. Oh, thank you. Wow. And you know what? So I've got the early risers dedicated, going to be there early. But now you guys have weathered through the day and you are the final finishers, not going to miss anything. I'm here till the end, so I think you need the applause. So well done, well done. So it is a delight to be here with SHRM again. I think the last time I was with you guys at the annual conference was in, oh my gosh, Louisiana. New Orleans, and it was spitting hot. So it is, love San Diego, and my home is San Jose, so I didn't have to travel too far. So it's lovely to journey down south and join you. So if you were planning to attend Creating a Culture of Respect, you are at the right place. And, oh my gosh, culture, the impact of culture is enormous, absolutely enormous on everything, on working relationships, on productivity, on morale. It's the whole package. And we know what happens when culture breaks down. And there's no better quote than I know of than this one by Peter Druckers, who says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast. The best laid plans are destroyed, your productivity is destroyed when there is a lack of a culture of respect." Now, here's why. I have found that when breakdowns occur, when conflict erupts, which is a reality in life, in the human family, it's a reality. And at work, when people just perceive that they are being disrespected or devalued, oh my gosh, the conversations and concerns move from the issue at hand to defending dignity. Change of topic. And here's why. Because respect is like air, and when it's taken away, it's all people can think about. So, as a professional mediator, I have discovered that respect, it's like the glue that holds teams together, that holds culture, that holds the entire organization together. And guess what? When respect breaks down, guess who gets the 911 phone call? Would you wave at me? It's you. It's you. And I call HR's, well, first of all, you're my favorite audience in the world. You're my favorite audience because I believe HR professionals, I call you relationaries. You understand when respect breaks down, relationships break down. When relationships break down, organizations break down. Everything. Productivity, disengagement. Now, culture. Don't worry, I am not going to give you a definition of culture. You're HR professionals, you've heard many. In culture, well, it can be a bit hard to define. So what I want you to do, bring out your cell phone, and I want you to think about one word. If you were only given one word to describe culture, what would that word be? One word. Okay, as soon as you've scanned that, I'm going to move the slide and we will see your responses. Of course, we're going to cross our fingers, hoping technology works for us. Ready? Keep the app open. Because I will have you respond again. Okay, here's some of the words. Look at those. Oh, harmony. belongingness, respect, relationships, environment, atmosphere, harmony. Oh, you know what? I didn't know that kind of flashed as new responses came in. Whoa. And tell you what, I am going to, this app that I'm using is called Mentimeter, and I think I can get that word cloud. I have given SHRM my handouts for the day, but don't worry, you can download it, but if you'd rather not worry about taking notes, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to contact me, and everyone who does, I will give you the handout plus the fill-ins of the words that you had to fill in, and I'm going to send you a number of other things, including a respect chart, which we are going to create today. So stay till the end, though. Otherwise, you're going to have to navigate my website on your own. Okay, thank you for those words. Whoa, that's a cache of words. Look at all of those. And if I were to be given one word, it would be behaviors. Because behaviors are what demonstrate an organization's values, is what happens. It's the interactions, how people behave and interact with one another. There's your measurement of culture. Now, if I was given a second word, whoa, I must be hitting. If I was given a second word, it would be relationships. Here's why, because how people behave and interact with each other will either build relationships and build trust, or it will erode it. Lastly would be patterns, because it's the pattern of the behaviors, what we come to expect and receive from each other on an ongoing basis. And those determine whether our relationships are going to be positive or negative. We measure culture by the way we interact, by how we are treated by others. So cultures can be measured by behaviors. I think of them as really kind of synonyms. Culture is measured by how a company's employees and management interact and do business. And that's coworker to coworker. It's also manager to team member and team member to manager. How much safety is there in giving feedback to each other, talking about behaviors and their impact? Now, culture is not measured by the values posted on the wall. Remember a company called Enron? Ooh, transparency, honesty, open communication. Yeah, tell that to the courts. Culture is not measured by the values on the wall or posted on company walls or printed in employee handbooks. Culture is measured by what happens between the cubicles. A value on the wall, that can be a wish if the behaviors are not respectful between each other, and how we interact, as well as people might be getting their work done, but how they are getting it done and how they are interacting with others is immensely important. Okay, if an organization's values, norms, code of conduct are to be lived out daily, clarity needs to be established around expected behaviors, and these are behaviors that are at times, particularly when conflict erupts, which is a reality in life. All it takes for people to experience conflict is for someone to say something that you disagree with about a topic you care deeply about. Okay, then we're in conflict. we need clarity, particularly what's the expectation of behaviors when opinions differ, when people are voicing concerns. How concerns are voiced is important. It's also important that people can do that, voice concerns. At times when disagreements erupt, when problems occur, the ball is going to get dropped, and when the line of respect is crossed. What are the expectations, clear expectations of the behaviors? And that is when we're working face-to-face, in person, or when we're working hybrid. Okay, you are HR. What are the behaviors that destroy a culture of respect? Of anyone, you know them. I don't need to list them. So scan that QR code if you're not already in Mentimeter. Share challenging behaviors that you have seen, observed, or my gosh, that you hear of in your workplace. What's been reported to you? And let's see some examples. Share a challenging behavior that erodes a culture of respect. And abracadabra, there we go. Okay. Toxic yelling, woohoo. Nepotism, and that's a hard conversation to have, but it can be had. I've had to work with people in having those conversations, especially hard when you have a family-run business. Okay, raising voices. Voice tone is important. Ego. How many organizations have imploded because of the egos of their executive leaders? Oh my gosh. Yep, lies, deceits, manipulation, bullying, yelling, gossiping, retaliation or fear of it. Yep, gossip, not listening to people. I'm going to talk about that. Listening is not waiting for a turn to talk. Okay, we'll get specific about that. Rudeness, gossip, arrogance, and I suspect there's probably even more words listed. Okay, so we need to have a culture of respect. It's critical to have clarity around expected behaviors. People need to know what they're being held accountable for. But just to be told, you need to be respectful. In this culture, in this world of politics, it needs to be made very clear. And to do that, we need to describe what meeting expectations looks like and sounds like. But here is what oftentimes organizations do not do. What does not meeting expectations look like? You listed, we had all kinds of words there. Bully behavior, gossip, complaining, fear of retaliation, threatening. What not meeting expectations look like. And as we get clear on what does not meet expectations, we then have language for addressing behaviors that cross the line of respect. So now, but how do we get clarity? How do we get clarity on meeting expectations as well as not meeting expectations? Well, to do that, I created this chart. And I work through this with organizations and teams. And as you can see, it's about respect, what it looks like, but we go into 4 specific categories. This is probably a little easier to read. And remember, I'm going to give you this blank chart. You're going to connect with me. I'm going to send you this, and I'm going to send you our filled in one. So take pictures if you want, but I can give you the document. Okay, what does meeting expectations look like, sound like in communicating directly? What about using respectful and professional language? using respectful and professional body language. Rolling eyes is not okay. Using professional voice tone and volume. How many challenges that you listed fall into this category? So what I do, I pull the organization people together and we fill this chart out. Meeting expectations, and then where does it become gray? What is not okay? Now, let me show you what, here's an example of one organization that I worked with, what they described as meeting expectations in the area of communicating directly. It means two-way dialogue. So there's talking and there's listening. And remember, listening is not, what did I say? Is not waiting for a turn to talk. You know someone is listening when they're asking clarifying questions, when they are acknowledging different perspectives. You know what, if we could get away from even sometimes words, I agree, I disagree, what if instead we would say, my perspective is different. Here's my thinking. Different, then sometimes the agree and disagree, you know how it starts to move people to taking sides. Sometimes it's a matter of perspective. It's not even a matter of right or wrong. What we're looking at is what is the best decision for our team, for our organization, that's manageable, sustainable, not who has the power to pitch the idea. Okay, so those were some examples of meeting expectations. Okay, shout out. What would be examples of not meeting expectations? Talking over people, or in a way also interrupting. Give me a few more. Non-responsive. That can be neglect, that could be passive aggressive. What else? It's called, have you heard of triangulation? Person A is upset at B, and so person A talks to C. So what I have to do when that's happening, we give everyone language about bringing up that I feel uncomfortable when I'm put in the middle of a situation. I think it's best that you bring your concern to this person directly. Complaining, gossiping. Here is what the group that I was working with, this is a few of what they put together. Monologue, lecture, talking at someone instead of talking with them. And here we have a few. Interrupting, over-talking, and dominating were examples used. I recently did Creating a Culture of Respect. It was the second in a series of 3 trainings with South Placer Municipal Utility District. And okay, imagine 26 employees, including their general manager, and we had 3 departments. It was the field service team, it was the technical team and administrative team. That group sat down and they filled out this chart, both meeting expectations, not meeting, 2 pages. And what they came up with and agreed to support, we made an agreement together. We also practiced how would we address the not meeting expectations. That is so important. You've not trained people how to deal with problematic behavior, disrespectful behavior, until you've helped them develop the language and you've put them in a practice session. So we put together, can you believe it? And we put together 2 pages. Nowhere in the world would HR or executive leaders put together a respect chart and tell employees, these are your expectations. But the employees as well as the leaders came together and put this together, made the agreement, and we practiced having conversations around behaviors that cross the line. Because quite often people want to, but knowing what to say, there's the rub, as Shakespeare would say. And I've had CEOs say, oh, Lori, I expect everyone, managers, all employees, to, if a behavior crosses the line, if there's an unmet expectation, I expect them to speak up and address it. And I said, oh, great. What kind of a communication framework have you given people for doing this? What kind of modeling? What kind of training? And then silence. Telling is not training. And you know what? Expectations without support and training can really kill relationships, break down culture. So with that, this was some examples of what we created. When we got to use respectful and professional language, what I ask them to do here is think of phrases when voicing a concern or when there are differing opinions, the time of potential conflict. What can you say to stay in dialogue and to, but still communicate respect? And here are some phrases that we liked. My perspective is different versus I agree, I disagree. I'd like to discuss potential concerns. Help me understand how this plan addresses, so instead of that won't work, that's bound to failure. Wait a minute. Help me to understand how this plan addresses whatever is the specific concern. Or please share where you identified your facts information. That is going to invite dialogue. That's a false statistic. I don't believe that. It's not going to make dialoguing really safe. So those were some of the phrases that we created. And then what they felt crossed the line, here we go. Judgmental, absolutes, that I'm right, you're wrong, what we call absolutes. Verbal character attack. And I think you've even listed some of these. Condescending remarks, sarcasm, etc. Now, cussing, foul language, here is where you're not going to have diversity and inclusion unless you're able to talk about what are different values. Okay, baby boomer generation. F word, you just didn't use it and you never used it at work. Now my niece and nephew, it's an adjective. So, but when you can get the 5 cultures together and talk about it, and people go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. You came across disrespectful because it's the conversation. You know what? It's not about rules. It's about understanding people, valuing their values and acknowledging them. Now, to the group of utility workers, they say, oh, Lori, when we're in our crews, that's just regular communication. But when a client or customer is there, And I said, if you ever slip, you bring out a bar of soap, and if a kid's around, you bring out a bar of soap, and you just start using that and say, you know what, I'm cleaning up my language, I'm so sorry you heard that, I'm not gonna do that again. So be ready for those backups. And it's about, though, the situation, and it's about understanding individual differences, individual values. So, and how powerful that kind of a conversation can be in knowing who's on your team, who you work with, and honoring that. So just quickly, body language. We talked about respectful. Also, what is disrespectful, from finger pointing, eye rolling. We also said, hey, you've got to be careful even on staring, because sometimes, people will stare up, and because that's how the brain works and recalls. So everything in context, but also, leaning into somebody's personal space. So having some conversations around that, as well as the importance of practicing those types of things. I had an HR leader at a conference, I think it was the HR Star in San Francisco, say, well, Lori, I have an employee who said she has been experiencing harassment for 6 months, but she hasn't said anything. And I said, okay, well, what have you provided within your harassment training where they practice speaking up? Because when people have less power than someone else, how do you make those conversations? How do you prep people for those conversations so that we can prevent problems from happening? So I can't imagine a harassment program where we just learn about laws and what it says, but that we are not practicing dialogue about behaviors that cross the line and bringing awareness. So how do we get practical? How do we equip people with words and language so that we really do prevention instead of either the legal or else bringing me in to help mediate and navigate conflict between employees. Okay, and you can see what we talked about: voice tone and volume, loud, shouting, screaming. And I even created a video, a Q&A that came from an employee saying, Lori, when my boss is angry, they go to the office and they slam their door. And so how to have that kind of a conversation. And I created a video on that and told them, especially opening it up, say, I noticed that when I heard the door was slammed, I looked around and I saw what appeared to be a fear on people's faces. It was silent, and there was a sense of it really not feeling safe. Now, my success and our success here is tied to yours. And so I want to let you know that behavior can really be limiting your success. People are going to have a hard time speaking up and trusting you. So I would invite you to find some more effective ways of dealing with your frustration. But slamming the door is not going to promote your success or a safe environment. So learning how to address those behaviors, bring people awareness, and patterns develop. And I have found, like in the airlines, there are frequent flyers. Well, we get into behaviors of disrespect. So, and again, you don't have to copy these. I will provide these. Okay, Mentimeter again, bring out that cell phone. Nick's question is, or Nick's poll, within my organization, now that I've talked about meeting expectations, not meeting expectations, tell me, within your organization, are people clear, somewhat clear, unclear, don't care? Someone asked that I add that, on what meets and does not meet expectations, okay? Let's see what the audience says. In my organization, okay, wow. Oh, wow. Anyone surprised? Would you have predicted? Take a look.
I think I would say mostly clear. Like,
Mostly clear?
I can't
Okay.
say clear because there are those that
Okay.
are not.
So because you had to choose one, okay.
Well,
You'd kind of, if you could do an in-between. Okay. Anybody else wave at me? I'd do an in-between. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Wow. Somewhat clear, 72. Unclear, 22. Okay. But it sounds like 14 organizations there have done a good job on getting clarity. So, okay. With that, so what happens when behaviors cross the line? You've probably heard the quote, the worst behavior tolerated by a manager becomes a workplace norm. So also, the worst behaviors tolerated at any organization by a manager, by coworkers, become a workplace norm. But knowing how to address those, there lies the challenge. In order to do that, we need the skill to be able to have accountability conversations. And those can include a friendly reminder. Oops, just a reminder, we've agreed instead of voicing our concerns and complaints to each other, to go directly to that person. I have an article on how to have that conversation, and that will be one of my free resources that I'll be sharing with you. And you might need to be real specific and address challenging behaviors. And here is a framework that I provide training and skill development in having those conversations. This is what I have used to have people practice. I will just quickly tell you each of the components, and then I will give you a demonstration of two people having a safe conversation, addressing a disrespectful behavior. This person is going to open with positive wants. He's going to talk about what he wants for this working relationships and the success of the other person. The way you open a conversation can determine your success. It is so huge in influencing a positive outcome. And we'll then identify the behavior, what the person said, moving to how it came across to him, how he was negatively impacted, and then he'll move it into dialogue by asking a question if the person doesn't already jump to dialogue. Whenever you have these conversations, so be ready, have a backup, because it's easy for defensiveness to erupt, and when it does, be ready to acknowledge or contrast. As a mediator, I've used this, and I've seen people go from fight to, acknowledge the person's concern or summarize what they've said. Acknowledge doesn't mean you agree, but you're letting the person know they've been heard. And I have found that people cannot listen because they keep thinking of what they want to say. But if you acknowledge and verbalize it, they go, she's heard me. They've heard me. And so it can be a great way to stay in dialogue. Ultimately, you want to get a request moving forward. Arguments don't get a request moving forward, so we quite often will argue and just get stuck. So that's a quick kind of sneak preview, but better yet, here is going to be a conversation between Barry and his coworker, Matt. And Barry is going to respond to this comment.
That is a stupid idea and destined to failure.
So they were asked to list some ways of cutting back on spending. And if we can in the back, I think we might need it a little louder. Is that possible? Okay. Gang, if you find that you need it louder, just give a thumbs up, and the guys, technology magicians in the back will take care of us. Okay, so how does Barry respond? He's going to open up with positive wants, what he wants for this relationship or the success of Matt.
Matt, I want you to be successful here. I also want us to have a positive and respectful working relationship.
When I heard you say that my idea for cutting spending is stupid and destined to failure, your words came across to me as disrespectful and an attack on my intelligence.
Oops.
Lighten up, Barry. Everyone has a right to express their own opinion. I don't think you're stupid. I simply disagree with your idea and believe it will cost us more money than it will save us.
Here's his knowledge.
You may disagree with my thinking. It's inevitable that there will be times when we will disagree. What's not okay is calling my idea stupid. I interpret that as a verbal assault. Moving forward, when you disagree, I'd like a commitment from you to simply tell me that you disagree and explain why you disagree without making negative comments or insults.
Now, this is coworker to coworker. If this is responded to by a manager, there's a higher accountability. A manager is responsible to call behaviors that are destroying a culture of respect. And in order to achieve safety, and in order to feel a sense of belonging or trust, you need to know that that manager is going to address behaviors that cross the line of respect. So, watch how, in this case, Barry is going to get a commitment from Matt, but also establish consequences moving forward. What will happen if this behavior reoccurs? Pattern behaviors are not okay. If we have pattern behaviors, we have a negligence in addressing them. Here we go.
Since being respectful is a job expectation, I need your commitment to avoid disrespectful comments. When you disagree with someone, explain your thinking and why you disagree. Do I have your commitment?
Yes, you have my commitment.
Okay, first point.
Thanks. I'm counting on you to keep your commitment.
And
If this behavior should reoccur, I'll address it as a performance concern.
okay. Now, reality. Sometimes a single conversation can resolve an issue. Someone can stop, get out of a pattern, self-correct. More commonly, you will need to have a series of conversations. And sometimes a person may need to hear from more than one person. That's why it's important to give everyone the skill at being able to address those behaviors that cross the line. So I want to be realistic. One conversation is not a quick fix, and it's going to take time and practice to train yourself, to train your team, and to train within your organization. But it can be done. And of any time in history of just organization and of just a concern with civility and our political climate, it's never been more important to do some interruption, let's get some new expectations, and let's create dialogue for people in being able to address these situations. So, anyway, my website, conversationsintheworkplace.com. If this content resonated with you, if you'd like to know more, and if you want to have just a 30-minute session with me where we talk, we look at how a framework like this can support your organization, then go to my website, hit that Talk to Lori, and sign up for just 30 minutes. I will, anyone here, I'll clear 30 minutes for you to have that conversation with me. What I want to do, though, is to move to the Q&A session. Before I do that, though, I'm going to tell you how to access the free resources and what all of those include, and then I'll come back and we'll do Q&A. How does that sound? Fair? Okay. So, free resources. If this blank respect chart would be helpful, I will provide that. I will also give you a copy of the one that has been completed, and you are welcome to, it looks like it's 2 pages completed. One of my most recent article that I published is Navigating Public Affair Discussions in the Workplace. So that was one I presented a session on managing policy, not politics in the workplace. What do you do when an inappropriate political comment is mentioned? For example, if you believe that political opinion, you're an idiot. And I give some examples on how to address that kind of situation. Know that every author loves a reader. And so these articles could be great resources to pass on to your managers. It could also be a way of saying, hey, you supported my being at SHRM. I want to share some of the resources that were available. So this one, I will include that in an email to you. I also have made, some people have said, Lori, the training, it takes too much time. But what I'd love to do is a lunch and learn. It'd be a great way for our people to get familiar with the framework as well as begin to promote a culture of respect, accountability, and helping people have those safe conversations. So I have consolidated my work. I can do it virtually, and within an hour people can bring their lunch, or it's an inexpensive way for an organization to just provide lunch. If we can do it virtual, then we don't even have to worry about transportation, my having to travel anywhere. So with that, free resources. If you go to my website, again, www.conversationsintheworkplace.com. If you hit that free resource button, that will take you to a page where you're just going to give your name, answer a few questions, and provide your email. I'm finding if people do it technology, it's easier to read the writing. So that has really helped me get stuff directly to you. So I will be glad to send you all of those in addition to today's handout with the answers filled in. So you will leave with quite a few resources there. And with that, let's go back. I would love to get Q&A. And I do have there are a few more business cards up here. So if you'd like to come and get one of those, then you can walk away with that. With that, let's move to a Q&A. And I think we have a volunteer who is going to be walking around with a microphone. And I'd love to hear any questions you have on this content. Difficult conversations that you need to navigate, and any Q&A that I would be able to answer. I also know that we have a huge amount of resources here of different people. Okay, I see one here, and then I'm going to come back right here. Right here.
So I liked your video, and I was curious about the relationship when the offender is the boss.
Okay, well, that one is my influencing up and across. And so how do you have that conversation with a boss? And so what I do, I use the framework, opening up with positive wants, and I also add some other steps to help make it safe. And it might sound like this. Let me just give you a demo instead of what the strategy. Lauren, I would love to have a few minutes with you and check in, see if now is an okay time. There's something that I've noticed that I'm concerned might be limiting your success. And because my success rides piggyback on yours, I would like to share those observations, because the more successful you are, the more successful I am. If your knees are still shaking and you want to make it safe, say, I really believe that having someone's back is letting them know if there's something that they're doing that might be limiting their success. And I'd like to know that you would do the same thing for me. So here, it's humility, it's openness. You're saying this is a little risky. And then say, I've noticed that, and it could be when you slam the door, I've noticed that when you ask for feedback and people answer, well, it's coming across as an attack and they're feeling shut down. And as a result, it seems like they are becoming silent. So that is a demo, not a instruction. Okay, and I promise to come back right here.
Please hold it for the mic. Sorry.
And she's right on this side.
So in our leadership meetings, we have one of my coworkers, one of the leaders, starts off her conversation with respectfully, and then the words that are coming out of her mouth are anything but respectful. So I'd like to know how in that group, because you're in a group and everybody just kind of shuts down because it's so disrespectful, how you can address that.
And this is to your supervisor.
No, she's a coworker.
Oh, a coworker.
But we're in our group meeting.
Okay. I'm going to give you off the cuff what I might do. While I believe your intention is to respectfully give a message, it didn't come across as respectful to me. And I want us to be, I wonder if we might be able to rephrase that, to make it sound a little more open. What would be helpful is if I could hear what the person said after respectfully. Is it possible for you to fill in? And you could make up something. Sometimes you have to be so specific with people because they don't, telling someone, that was rude. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. You're not going to get anywhere. But when you are able to say, if that person said respectfully, what in the hell happened that this project was a big failure? Ooh, okay. How you might respond to that. I think what's important is for us describing what problems, what broke down, and looking at what contributed to that. And I'm open to look at my contributions, and others can look at their contributions. because otherwise we can get into a bit of blame, and that is going to destroy our working relationships. And so, a matter of fact, the leader in the room is the one who can describe problems without laying blame. So I'd like us to be able to up our leadership and see if we could look at what happened, what didn't work, and what we can do moving forward. Now, we can address breakdowns without attacking another person. Character attack is like a punch, and you can't unpunch someone. And so, how can we describe problems? And then we can take ownership and accountability moving forward, but we can do it without destroying dignity of another fellow human being. Now, I've talked far more than she is going to want to talk to her boss, but you know what? Do a snippet of any of that. What I have done, and I learned this, I created this after COVID. I created a library of resources. And a matter of fact, if you want, well, a library of resources, and where I've given examples of these safe conversations when someone's complaining, when someone's gossiping, when there's an unmet expectation, when somebody is late to work. Also, what if you are managing up? And I've created a library of those. People can go into a specific example, complaining, gossip, unmet expectations, negative political comments, negativity and complaining, and they can actually see those videos of how to do that. And my intention was, I found that I would come and do training or a series of trainings, but people needed to be able to go back, and you needed it at the time of the conversation. How do you get prepped for it? And so what I do, I added that when I now do the trainings, I also will give a certain amount of days to have access to that library. So I have recorded my trainings so that they can go refresh. And I also created that library. And my hope was that HR people would see it, look at it, and that it might be a tool that they could use when people are coming and needing to be walked through how to have that difficult conversation. And it uses the framework. So if that's of interest, I'd love to have some people do a pilot of some of my videos and give feedback. So if you're interested, email me, Lori at Conversations in the Workplace, and just say, I'd be interested in piloting. I'll give you a passcode and access for certain days. But what I would ask is that you would just give me some feedback. So, okay, so that question, and boy, these lights are bright. We have one more back here.
I was just going to ask, is there a step before the conversations? Because I have a manager and a director who are feeling intimidated and bullied, and they have employees that they're not talking to, that they don't even want to have one-on-one, like the regular one-on-one check-ins with, that this having a difficult conversation seems extreme because they don't even want to have a regular weekly one-on-one check-in. Like, is there a step before this to repair that before we can even?
Have a question. Does this individual have the skill to be a manager?
I'm HR.
In your opinion.
No, we advised them not to promote this person to a manager. They did it anyway.
Well, okay.
The director was there for a really long time, got promoted anyway. So, like, they come to me and they complain, and I say, what has your director does? What has your deputy director done? And they said, go to HR.
Okay. Everyone needs training. The manager needs to be trained, and needs to know how to have those conversations. But anyone working with that manager needs to know how to have those conversations, because you need to create a culture where it's safe.
We've given them multiple trainings, and it's not
But what
sticking.
kind of trainings were they?
In-person conversations and communication trainings.
And
Yeah.
did they have,
Not to this detail, but I'm just saying.
You can't learn communication with a book.
No, it was in person. We had them sit at a round table.
And this person practiced a framework on how to have these conversations?
I just said it wasn't this specific framework, but I'm saying we've had in-person trainings with this team.
I don't think people have been trained unless they have that framework. And I have people write, before they share their dialogue with me, they write it out. And my background is education. And writing it out, it is a powerful, the connection and the retention. So they write it out and then they speak it out, and then I give them coaching. And they are all in the same room at the same time. So other people are hearing not only what they're saying, but they're hearing the coaching, and we're skill training. So I would question if the training was adequate. And so
Obviously not, because it's not sticking.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
and that until people are able to have difficult conversations, they are not ready to be into management. It's inevitable. It's a package deal. And I'm from Silicon Valley, and
no, I'm in San Francisco.
okay, well,
We're neighbors.
you know, and we too often, I presented at Witty, Women in Technology International. They asked me, what are the biggest problems facing the technology world today? They'll solve the technology problems. It's the people problems. It's the communication back and forth. And we promote for someone who has outstanding technical skills, but the relational skills, the depth of an eggplant. So you get a little humor today, but you know, that's what keeps us going. And so thank you. You were asking beautiful questions. The reality is just that. I don't know that they're adequately trained and skilled, but then you also, I can train, I can have them practice, but it's a package deal. It has to be the skills, and it has to be a humble heart. And so quite often I will tell people, best managers, here's my accountability section. That is even another, you're getting the extra. Accountability, see those who stay, particularly final, you know, at 4:00 and still stay for a Q&A, 3 questions every manager should ask, every leader should ask, and then have their teams ask. 1, what am I doing that is helpful, you find supporting you, that you want me to continue doing? So what do I continue to do? This one takes guts. What do you want me to continue doing? Number 2, courage. Here's courageous leadership. What do you want me to stop doing? What am I doing that's interrupting or limiting your success? Stop doing. And then 3, what do you want me to start doing? Now, and if they will ask that at one-on-ones, and when a manager makes it safe to ask and answer those questions, when teams can do that, then see what we're doing. We're giving feedback. We're having difficult conversations. But I do believe leadership has to be at a place to create safety around that. And sometimes I have to work with them first on, you're asking for feedback. You need to say thank you. Now, they might have to think through it, and you don't have to agree with everything. But when you can create safety, so it's safe to ask, that's going to be immensely powerful. So, as you can tell, I love Q&As. I have no notes. So I am, as long as you have questions, I'm good to go. None of you are expected. Again, I have my business cards up here. I told you how if you want if you'd like a 30-minute session with me to do a little brainstorm about safe conversations. But I'll also be glad to, if anybody else has a question, I'll be glad to answer. And as long as people are here and listening, you are welcome to participate in that conversation. So, oh, don't forget the survey. I think they were going to tell you about that, so please. SHRM is very interested in knowing your feedback, so please go to the place to get the survey and give your feedback.